Photosynthesis chemical reaction. Photosynthesis uses the energy from light, from, say, example, the sun, carbon dioxide, and water to make glucose and oxygen. This simple equation sums up the result of the photosynthesis process, its reactants and products. However, the processes that make photosynthesis possible are not very simple. The first thing we need to be able to do is capture the energy from the light. Photosynthesis depends on chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a molecule that absorbs red and violet blue light and uses it to energize electrons to a higher energy level. So it's absorbing light from red and violet blue and using it to energize the electrons to a higher energy level. We talked about that in the last section. The energy in this electron, which originally came from light, is stored in something called NADPH, which is then reduced to, which is the reduced form of NAD+. It has a hydrogen bonded to it. The electron and its energy is stored between the hydrogen and the NAD+ bond. Okay, so we have the electron. So if I have NAD+, there's a positive charge there, right? If I now have NADP and I bond it to a hydrogen, right? Now I have an extra electron stored here and energy stored in this bond, okay? It's a simplified way of looking at it. Therefore, NADPH is considered a high energy electron carrier. This energy will be used for another part of photosynthesis. Chlorophyll absorbs some of the energy of visible light. Plants have two main types of photosynthetic pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Together, these two types of chlorophyll absorb mostly red and blue wavelengths of light. Neither type absorbs much green light, so it bounces off of them. As a result, the green color of plants comes from the reflection of light's green wavelengths by chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is housed in thylakoids, which are membrane-bound structures within the chloroplasts of photosynthetic cells. Let's look more closely at chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are organelles in plant cells and are about 5 to 10 micrometers long. Each plant cell has from 1 to 100 chloroplasts. It is a double membraned structure that utilizes a concentration gradient and compartmentalization to maximize its production of glucose. So you have a double membrane structure, an outer and an inner membrane. We have these thylakoids, so an individual thylakoid here. A stack of thylakoids is called a granum, and there's aqueous fluid throughout called stroma. This graph represents the absorption spectrum of chlorophyll. The two lines represent the two types of chlorophyll. So in green, we have chlorophyll A, and in this reddish orange, we have chlorophyll B. Chlorophyll B, you can see, absorbs light right here, so blue light, and down here, orange light best. And chlorophyll A absorbs violet blue and red light best. For both pigments, this green in the middle is the least absorbed color. Photosynthesis is an anabolic pathway made up of a series of chemical reactions. An anabolic pathway is just a pathway that builds complex molecules from simpler ones, and typically they need an input of energy. Because it requires energy to proceed, it is a non-spontaneous reaction. We will not learn all of the reactions now, but we can learn the net equation, the reaction that summarizes this entire process, where carbon dioxide and water react with energy from light to produce glucose and oxygen. Photosynthesis captures energy from the non-living world and converts it to chemical energy that cells can use. Photosynthesis captures the free energy of sunlight and then stores that energy in the glucose molecule. The free energy stored in the chemical bonds of glucose is then used to power life. Photosynthesis makes much of life possible. Let's take a closer look at glucose and how it's used to store energy. If we write the formula for glucose as below, do you see why it's called a carbohydrate? So if instead of C6H12O6, we write it as C6 and then 6 H2O molecules, water, right? So we still have the same number of carbons. We have 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. So it's the same molecule. But what this is showing is that we have carbon and waters, right? Carbohydrate is where that comes from. Because it is made up of carbon and water, glucose is a type of carbohydrate. Written either way as C6H12O6 or C6 and then H2O6, we have 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen, and 6 oxygen atoms. The word carbohydrate is a combination of carbon and hydro, meaning water. There are many different types of carbohydrates in living things. We'll see the connection between the carbohydrates you eat and glucose in a later unit. The glucose molecule contains more chemical energy than the water and carbon dioxide from which it was formed. So on this side, we have greater energy, and that's because the energy is being absorbed from the light. When the reaction runs in the opposite direction, we'll see energy will be released. Factors affecting the rate of photosynthesis. First, light intensity. At low levels, when light intensity is increased, the rate of photosynthesis increases. At high levels, further increases have no effect on the rate of photosynthesis. So you can see when the light intensity is low, if we increase it at those low levels, we get an increase in the rate of photosynthesis. But at higher levels of light intensity, if we continue to increase it, we get a plateau, having no effect on the rate of photosynthesis. Next factor affecting the rate of photosynthesis is pH. Photosynthesis is a process mediated by different enzymes, each of which function at a different optimal pH. One such enzyme is known by the common name rubisco. It's a key enzyme in photosynthesis and has an optimal pH of about 9. Changing the pH will decrease the rate of photosynthesis as rubisco works slower. The graph shows that the enzyme works best at a pH of 8.9. So you get 100% activity at a pH of about 8.9, and then after that it goes down just slightly.